The first laugh came from the sky. It wasn't thunder, it wasn't lightning. It was a booming cackle that rippled through clouds and rattled windows as though the heavens themselves had decided humanity was a joke. All across Earth, people dropped what they were doing and looked up, shielding their eyes from the glare of 1,000 metallic vessels descending. These ships did not open fire, nor did they spread plagues or unleash laser storms like movies had taught us to expect. Instead, enormous speakers unfolded from their hulls, vibrating the air with laughter so loud and cruel it seemed to dig into the bones. And then the words followed, sharp and mocking, delivered in a language every human understood without translation. They called us primitive hunters, bumbling meat stalkers hiding in bushes with sticks and noisy toys. They called us a species that preyed on creatures too slow to escape, and then congratulated ourselves for being predators. The laughter that followed was worse than any gunshot. It was humiliation broadcast across the world. At first, some thought it was a prank, a spectacularly expensive stunt cooked up by billionaires with too much money. But the ships were real, their shadows stretched over cities and fields, and their messages were not jokes. Hunters in Alaska, Africa, India, and Texas were specifically singled out by name. The aliens mocked their trophies, their photographs with rifles raised proudly over fallen deer or lions. They replayed videos of humans missing shots, slipping in mud, falling out of tree stands. The aliens laughed at duck blinds, at camouflage jackets, at arrows tipped with bright orange feathers. Their ridicule was so detailed, so cutting, that it was impossible not to feel pierced. They knew about us, our hunts, our habits, our pride, and they were here to shred it to pieces. News anchors tried to spin it, to find dignity, but the broadcasts became comedy shows. Late-night hosts ran montages of aliens laughing at camel-wearing hunters who tripped into lakes. Even leaders of nations struggled to respond. What was the military supposed to do? Fire missiles at ships that hadn't harmed anyone yet? And yet, in a strange way, the aliens had done something worse than invasion. They had made us into a punchline. No one likes being laughed at, but no species can endure universal humiliation. That was the first night Earth did not sleep well. Hunters were outraged the most. In smoky bars and hunting lodges, old men slammed fists on tables. In rural backyards, younger hunters posted angry videos swearing vengeance. Survivalists in bunkers recorded rants about defending Earth with compound bows and grit. A particularly famous Texan, known for winning state tournaments, went on live television with his rifle slung over his shoulder. He shouted up at the sky that if the aliens wanted a challenge, they should land in his backyard. He promised to make them dance. The aliens did not respond. The silence that followed was its own insult, as though they found him beneath even the courtesy of an answer. But then came the announcement. The alien leader, a creature who called himself Commander Zyrk, appeared on every screen with a grin filled with too many teeth. He declared that Earth's hunters would have a chance to prove themselves. Not soldiers, not scientists, not presidents. Hunters. If one could impress them, they would reconsider their conquest. If none succeeded, humans would not be enslaved or destroyed. No, the aliens had something worse in mind. Every hunter on Earth would be catalogued, caged, and displayed as zoo exhibits on distant worlds. Behold, Zyrk said mockingly, the bumbling predators of Earth, who stalk squirrels and cry about deer. The laughter that followed shook cities. It was around that time that whispers began about a man who might stand a chance. His name surfaced in hunting forums, then in local news, and soon it rolled across the world like a rumor too stubborn to die. Elias Cross. For those who remembered the old competitions, the name was legend. He was the sharpshooter who never missed, the hunter who could split a bullet on the edge of a coin at 500 yards. He had won championships across continents, but then, suddenly, he had disappeared. No explanations, no interviews, no retirement speeches. He had walked away at the height of fame, and people had spent years speculating why. Some said injury, some whispered scandal, others claimed he simply grew bored. But now his name resurfaced as though fate itself had been waiting. Journalists camped outside his remote cabin. Officials begged him to step forward. Hunters sent him letters, videos, prayers. But Elias did not answer. He was a ghost, a man who wanted nothing to do with the world stage. Alone, inside his small wooden home, he sat by the fire and listened to the broadcasts with a grim face. His rifle leaned in the corner, gathering dust. His hands, once steady as iron, now trembled whenever he thought of picking it up again. Because Elias Cross was not retired by choice. He was retired by guilt. The aliens must have sensed the hesitation, because Commander Zyark mentioned him by name in one of the broadcasts. "Where is your Elias Cross?" the aliens sneered. "Hiding behind wooden walls, hoping we will forget him. Even your finest hunter trembles at our laughter." It was meant to break him, but Elias did not flinch. He simply turned off the television and poured another drink. Yet the words echoed. "Trembles at our laughter." The world waited, wondering if the ghost would rise. That night, something unexpected happened. A knock came at Elias's door, faint but insistent. When he opened it, he found not a journalist or an official, but a boy. No more than 15, clutching an old hunting cap too big for his head. The boy looked up at Elias with eyes full of fear and pride. He said he was the son of a hunter the aliens had mocked on live television, and he couldn't stand it. He told Elias the world needed him, that hunters needed him, that if anyone could wipe that grin off Zyark's face, it was him. Elias wanted to shut the door. He wanted to retreat into silence. But the boy's words stayed like barbed hooks. For the first time in years, Elias looked toward his dusty rifle in the corner, and the weight of his past pressed hard on his chest. The laughter from the sky continued the next day, louder, crueler, like a storm that wouldn't pass. But now, somewhere deep in the forests of America, a man who had once been a legend sat at a table with a boy's desperate plea echoing in his ears. He wasn't ready, not yet. But something inside him had shifted. The aliens had called Earth's hunters a joke. Elias Cross was beginning to wonder if he was the punchline they were not ready for. Elias Cross woke to the sound of engines overhead. The alien ships had become a part of daily life now, drifting across skies with the casual arrogance of predators circling a trapped herd. They had yet to fire a single shot, but their presence alone pressed down on the world like an unshakable weight. Every broadcast from their leader was another round of mockery, another chorus of laughter that dug into human pride. Elias sat at his wooden kitchen table, staring at the same untouched mug of coffee he had poured an hour earlier. He had hoped the boy's visit would fade from his mind like a passing storm, but it hadn't. The boy's words had clung to him through the night. "The world needs you. Hunters need you." The knock on his door came again the following morning, heavier this time. When Elias opened it, he found not one person but three. A woman with the stern face of a government official, a man holding a news camera, and another hunter in a camouflage jacket with more confidence than sense. The official wasted no time with pleasantries. She told him that the world was begging for an answer, that he was the name on everyone's lips, and that his silence was being taken as cowardice. The cameraman tried to capture his face, and Elias slammed the door in their path. He had lived too many years away from the public to let strangers drag him back into the spotlight. But their words still landed. Cowardice. He hated the way that one clung more tightly than any insult the aliens had thrown. Later that afternoon, a live broadcast filled his television screen without permission. Commander Zyark appeared again, this time lounging in a strange throne that looked like it was grown rather than built. His grin was wider than before. He announced that Earth's hunters had 1 week to produce a champion. If no one stepped forward, the decision would be made. Hunters would be collected like animals and displayed for alien amusement. He even mocked the zoo displays by showing an animation of hunters in tree stands while children of alien species threw popcorn at them. The world erupted in outrage, but Zyark seemed to drink it in like wine. Then he paused, leaned closer, and spoke Elias's name again. Not just Elias, but his full name, his hometown, and even the exact coordinates of his cabin. He told Earth that their legendary hunter was in hiding, too ashamed to defend his own kind. The broadcast ended with laughter that sounded like steel scraping across glass. The next morning, Elias found his porch crowded. Local hunters, reporters, even children with signs. Some carried banners demanding he step forward, others pleaded with him to save humanity's pride. He kept the doors shut, but their voices carried through the walls. Every word made his stomach turn. He wasn't afraid of the aliens, not really. What he feared was the rifle in his corner. Every time his eyes drifted to it, he remembered the shot he hadn't taken years ago, the hesitation that had cost another man his life. It was the kind of failure that burrows into the soul and gnaws forever. He had sworn off shooting not because of pride but because he couldn't bear to hold the weight of another mistake. But the aliens were clever. They weren't just attacking humanity with technology. They were striking at the heart of identity. For thousands of years, humans had hunted, not only for food but for tradition, culture, survival. The aliens had chosen that part of humanity because they knew it was primal. To take it away was to strip humans of dignity itself. And that was the weapon Elias couldn't ignore. The boy's words replayed in his head, alongside the alien taunts, forming a storm he couldn't quiet. That evening, Elias walked into the small town nearby, hoping to buy supplies in silence. Instead, he was met with stares. Whispers followed him down every aisle of the general store. Some looked at him with hope, others with disappointment. At the counter, the clerk handed him his goods and asked quietly if he would do it. Elias didn't answer, but the pause was enough. The whole town seemed to know what he was wrestling with. As he left, he caught sight of posters on the walls showing the faces of mocked hunters from around the world. It wasn't just an American issue anymore. Hunters from Africa, Asia, South America, they were all being ridiculed, all being threatened with cages. For the first time, Elias understood that this was larger than his guilt. Back at his cabin, he sat by the fire, staring at the rifle. He hadn't touched it in years. His hand trembled as he reached for it, but when he lifted it, the weight was familiar, almost comforting. He should have felt fear, but instead, he felt something different, anger. Not at himself, not at the past, but at the aliens who thought laughter was stronger than human spirit. He remembered his teammate's face, the one he had failed years ago, and he realized the man wouldn't have wanted him to hide. He would have wanted him to stand. The next day, officials returned, this time with clearer authority. They told Elias the alien challenge was real, that the terms had been set. A single hunter would be chosen to enter the alien arena, a place designed to test every skill imaginable. The governments of the world were considering alternatives, sending soldiers disguised as hunters, rigging the challenge with technology, but none of it mattered. The aliens would know. They wanted a hunter, not a soldier, not a politician. And Earth had one name that echoed above all others. Elias Cross. Elias didn't answer immediately. He listened as the official laid out the stakes again, listened as the cameraman whispered that the world needed hope, listened as the hunter in camouflage swore he would go if Elias would not. But Elias knew what would happen if he refused. Humanity would lose more than pride. It would lose dignity forever. He thought of the boy at his door, of the zoo cages filled with men and women mocked as curiosities. The thought was unbearable. Slowly, painfully, Elias nodded. The announcement spread faster than wildfire. The ghost had risen. News outlets across the globe shouted his name. Hunters cheered in bars, strangers wept in living rooms, and even the aliens seemed delighted. Commander Zyrk appeared again, grinning so wide his teeth gleamed. He welcomed Elias into the challenge with mock applause. A single meat ape with a boomstick, Zyrk sneered. This will be delightful. The laughter that followed was deafening. Elias did not smile. He did not answer. He stood on his porch that night, staring at the alien ships in the sky. His rifle rested in his hands, steady now. For the first time in years, he felt not like a broken man but like a hunter again. The world's weight pressed down on his shoulders, but it was a burden he chose to carry. The aliens thought humanity's pride was easy prey. They had no idea what kind of predator they had just provoked. The day Elias was taken to the alien arena began with silence. Not the silence of peace, but the suffocating hush of millions watching, holding their breath, waiting to see if a man with a rifle could defend humanity's dignity. Across Earth, televisions glowed in living rooms, projectors lit up crowded squares, and hunters huddled in lodges to watch the man who had once vanished into obscurity walk into the most dangerous hunt ever staged. The aliens had designed the arena to impress and terrify in equal measure, and when the first images of it appeared on screens, gasps echoed worldwide. It wasn't a forest or a plain, not even a jungle. It was a shifting labyrinth of environments stitched together like some surreal painting come to life. A canyon where gravity tilted sideways, a valley where fog bent light into mirages, a jungle of trees that seemed to breathe, and beasts stalking each sector with glowing eyes. When Elias first stepped onto the alien soil, the laughter began immediately. Aliens filled stadium-like seats high above the arena, their voices booming like thunder. Some waved banners mocking him, others placed bets on how quickly he would fail. The sound was deafening, yet Elias kept walking, his rifle steady in his hands, his eyes calm. Inside, his heart pounded, but he let the noise wash over him as though it were only wind. He had faced the jeers of humans before. This was no different. What mattered was the hunt. The first challenge came quickly. A creature shaped like a deer but covered in scales darted across the canyon floor. Its legs bent at strange angles, and its skin shifted colors like a chameleon, vanishing into the stone as it ran. The aliens roared with laughter, certain Elias would lose sight of it instantly. But Elias crouched low, breathing slowly, letting his hunter's instinct take over. He watched the way the dust scattered as the creature's feet struck the ground, the faint shimmer of scales against stone. He raised his rifle, adjusted for the sideways pull of gravity, and fired. The bullet struck true, and the creature collapsed in silence. For the first time, the alien crowd went quiet. Then came the laughter again, louder this time, as though covering their unease. Commander Zyrk's voice filled the arena, mocking Elias for wasting a bullet on such a simple quarry. "A trick of dust, a lucky shot," Zyrk sneered. "Let us see how long his fortune lasts." But deep inside, Elias knew that wasn't luck. It was experience. It was instinct. It was the kind of knowledge passed down through generations of hunters who learned to see what others overlooked. The next trial pushed him harder. A beast the size of a bear lumbered into the jungle sector, its skin armored with plates that deflected normal ammunition. Its roar shook the trees, sending flocks of alien birds screaming into the sky. Elias studied the creature carefully. Shooting it straight on would be useless. He circled, moving slow, scanning its body. Then he saw it. The plates overlapped near the shoulder, leaving a small vulnerable gap when the beast lunged. He waited, steady as stone, until the moment came. The beast charged, jaws wide, and Elias fired into the gap. The creature collapsed with a shudder, and the arena erupted again, but this time not all the noise was laughter. Some gasps echoed among the crowd, alien voices filled with surprise. Elias wiped sweat from his brow. It wasn't just the creatures that made this trial difficult. The arena itself was designed to break him. In the canyon, gravity pulled his rifle off target. In the jungle, plants released hallucinogenic spores that twisted reality. In the fog valley, echoes distorted sound, making it nearly impossible to tell where prey was moving. Every step demanded not only skill but focus, humor, and patience. More than once Elias muttered under his breath, jokes meant only for himself. "If this deer glows in the dark, does it count as night hunting?" he whispered, chuckling quietly while dodging a lizard with too many legs. His humor was grim, but it steadied his hands. Even hunters watching back on Earth laughed at his muttering, finding courage in his refusal to take the alien's game too seriously. But not everything in the arena was honest. As Elias navigated the shifting terrain, he caught sight of another human hunter crouching near a tree. Relief flickered through him. Perhaps he wasn't alone. But then he noticed something strange. The man's movements were too perfect, too rehearsed. His camouflage shimmered unnaturally under the light. When their eyes met, Elias felt a cold certainty. That wasn't a fellow hunter. It was an alien plant, a trick meant to sabotage him. The false hunter raised his weapon, aiming not at a beast but at Elias. Without hesitation, Elias dropped low and fired first. The figure collapsed, dissolving into smoke and metal fragments. The crowd erupted in laughter and applause, as if the sabotage had been nothing more than a stage act. Elias clenched his jaw, realizing the aliens had no intention of letting this be a fair contest. More figures appeared as the day dragged on, some human, some not. A woman in camo who panicked and fired wildly before being dragged off by an alien beast. A man with a bow who tripped in the fog and vanished into darkness. Elias suspected most of them weren't real. They were props, distractions, illusions designed to break his focus and humiliate him in front of the galaxy. But he stayed calm, each time muttering to himself, each time finding the thread of reality among the chaos. He had lived through humiliation before. He would not let laughter be his undoing again. As the trials stacked, so did the pressure. Hours passed. Sweat drenched his shirt, his muscles burned, but his eyes never wavered. Shot after shot landed true, and every creature that fell carried the weight of Earth's pride with it. On screens across the globe, people began to cheer. Hunters in Alaska raised drinks to his name. Farmers in India clapped their hands. Families in cities leaned forward, gripping one another's hands, whispering that maybe humanity stood a chance after all. The final trial of that day was not an animal but an illusion. Elias stepped into a sector where the ground was reflective, like walking on the surface of a mirror. He saw himself multiplied 100 times, each reflection moving slightly out of sync. Suddenly, one reflection raised a rifle and fired. The bullet hissed past his ear. Elias spun, aiming at the reflections, trying to find the source. The crowd roared with laughter at his confusion. But then he remembered the boy's words. Hunters need you. He calmed himself, ignored the reflections, and listened. In the silence he heard it, the faint click of a Rio rifle bolt, not an echo. He turned sharply and fired. The false Elias shattered like glass, and the mirror ground dissolved into sand. The laughter died again, and for the first time, Elias thought he heard something else in the alien crowd. Not just jeers, not just amusement. There was a murmur, a ripple of unease. They had expected him to fail, to crumble. Instead, he had endured. As he walked out of the arena for the day, sweat-soaked and exhausted, Elias realized something powerful. He hadn't just survived their challenges. He had begun to change the game. And that was the one thing the aliens had never planned for. The next morning the arena was darker than before. The aliens had dimmed the lights above the sectors, casting the whole place in a twilight glow that seemed to bleed into the air. It wasn't just a new trial, it was a message. Commander Zyrk appeared larger than life on the projection screens that floated above the stadium, his teeth glinting as he smiled. His voice carried like iron dragged across stone. Let us see what happens when shadows are given form. Let us see what your hunter hides from, when the laughter is not enough. His words echoed, and Elias felt the hairs on his neck rise. He knew before the trial even began that this was no ordinary challenge. They weren't testing his skill with the rifle now. They were coming for his soul. As Elias stepped forward, the arena shifted around him. The jungle with its breathing trees melted into a barren landscape littered with ash and broken bones. Fog curled low over the ground, and faint whispers carried in the wind, voices he almost recognized. He raised his rifle but found no prey, only memories. His chest tightened, and though he wanted to shake it off, he knew what was coming. The aliens had studied him. They had learned his weakness. The first figure to appear was a man in hunting gear, his face obscured at first by shadow. Then the fog lifted, and Elias felt his heart clench. It was Mark Hensley, his old teammate, the one he had failed years ago. The one who had died because Elias had hesitated. Mark's face was pale, hollow, but his eyes gleamed with accusation. "Why didn't you take the shot, Elias?" The figure whispered, his voice carried by the arena speakers so every alien could hear. The crowd roared with laughter and delight, not because they understood the memory but because they knew they had struck something raw. Elias gripped his rifle tighter, but his hands trembled. The memory surged back in detail he couldn't block out. A hunting competition years ago, deep in the Rockies. A target had appeared suddenly, fast-moving, and Elias had aimed but faltered. He had hesitated for a fraction of a second, doubting the shot. That pause had given a charging bear the moment it needed. Mark had been mauled before Elias could pull the trigger. He had killed the beast, but it was too late. Mark's blood had soaked into the snow, and Elias had never forgiven himself. That failure had ended his career, driven him into solitude, and buried his confidence under layers of guilt. Now, in front of the galaxy, the aliens pulled it out like a festering wound and put it on display. The apparition of Mark stepped closer, its face twisting into a cruel grin. "You'll fail them too. You'll fail the world, just like you failed me." Elias wanted to scream at it, to shut it out, but the weight of the memory crushed him. He staggered, lowering his rifle. The alien crowd erupted in laughter, a tidal wave of sound that threatened to drown him. But then something unexpected happened. Instead of hiding from the shame, Elias found himself laughing too. It started as a low chuckle, then grew louder until his shoulders shook. The aliens quieted, confused. "Is this what you think breaks me?" Elias shouted into the fog. "A ghost I've carried every day since it happened? You think dragging out my worst moment is enough to stop me?" His laughter echoed through the arena, turning their weapon back on them. For the first time, the alien audience didn't laugh with mockery but with uncertainty. Mark's apparition faltered, its grin fading. Elias stepped forward, his voice steady now. "I failed once, yes. And I'll carry that forever. But failure doesn't mean I'm finished. It means I learned. And if you think I'll hesitate again, you're the ones who don't understand hunters." He raised his rifle and fired directly at the phantom. The bullet passed through, and the fog dissolved into smoke. The crowd gasped, their jeers silenced. Commander Zyrk's face reappeared above, his grin thinner now, his eyes sharp. "Clever," he hissed. "Turning pain into comedy. But even comedy has its limits." He leaned forward, his voice dropping into something darker. "We know your every weakness, Elias Cross. We have studied you, dissected you. You are nothing but a fragile ape with a fragile heart." His words slithered into the arena, meant to crack Elias further. But Elias didn't flinch. Instead, he smirked and shouted back. "If you've studied me so well, then you know I've never been good at keeping my mouth shut. So let me make this clear. You may control the arena, you may throw ghosts and monsters at me, but you'll never take away the one thing every hunter has. We don't quit." His defiance rippled through the broadcast, carried into homes and bars across Earth. People cheered, shouting his name. Children clapped, old hunters raised their glasses, and humanity's spirit surged. The aliens had hoped to break him with guilt, but Elias had turned it into a weapon. He kept making jokes as the trials continued, each darker than the last. When the fog thickened and another phantom appeared, he muttered, "If my ex-wife shows up next, I'm really done for." The alien crowd laughed, but not in mockery this time. Some laughed because they were genuinely entertained. Commander Zyrk scowled, his grip tightening on the arm of his throne. The cracks were showing. Elias moved through the rest of the shadow trial with renewed determination. Each phantom was another memory twisted into cruelty, but he faced them with steady aim and sharper wit. He wasn't just fighting beasts now, he was fighting the story the aliens wanted to tell about humans. They wanted us weak, fragile, broken by laughter and shame. But Elias showed them something else. He showed them resilience. He showed them the power of laughing back. By the end of the day, the fog lifted, and the arena returned to its shifting landscapes. Elias stood tall, exhausted but unbroken. His rifle was still steady in his hands. The alien audience had grown quieter, their jeers softer, replaced with murmurs of something they had not expected: respect. Zyrk tried to hide his unease with a smile, but his eyes betrayed him. The sharpshooter had not only survived their cruelest weapon but had twisted it into a victory. As Elias walked out of the arena, his chest heavy with both pain and triumph, he realized something important. He could never erase his past mistake. Mark would always be gone. But by standing in that arena, by refusing to be crushed, he had finally honored his memory. For the first time in years, the guilt that had shackled him loosened its grip. He looked up at the alien ships above, their shadows sprawling across the land, and whispered to himself, "Not fragile. Not finished. Just getting started." The announcement of the final challenge was unlike anything before it. The alien crowd had grown restless, no longer laughing with the same certainty as in the first days. They had expected Elias to be humiliated, expected him to crumble beneath the weight of beasts, illusions, and memories. Instead, he had survived, and worse for them, he had turned their mockery into fuel. Commander Zyrk stood once again before the galaxy, his grin sharpened into something closer to a snarl. His voice carried through the arena, through the broadcasts, and into every home on Earth. "For your last trial, human, we will release our greatest creation. A beast stitched together from the fiercest predators across the stars. A creature no hunter has ever defeated. Bring it down, and your kind will be spared our collection. Fail, and you will join the others as trophies of our amusement." His words left no room for negotiation. This was it, the hunt that would decide everything. The arena began to shift again, its landscapes tearing and reforming. The gravity canyon collapsed into a wasteland of black stone, and the jungle folded into a field of twisted metal spires. The fog valley cleared, revealing a central pit glowing faintly with heat. The ground trembled, each vibration heavier than the last. From beneath the arena floor, something clawed its way upward, and the crowd roared with anticipation. The beast emerged in a spray of molten earth and smoke, towering over Elias like a nightmare made flesh. Its body was covered in armored scales, each plate bristling with jagged spikes. 6 legs dug into the stone, muscles rippling with terrifying power. Its eyes glowed red, too many of them scattered across its face, and its mouth was a gaping maw lined with teeth and spirals. The roar it unleashed rattled Elias's bones and sent a hush over the world watching. This was no ordinary animal. This was a monster born for spectacle and destruction. Elias steadied his breathing, raising his rifle to study the beast. Every hunter knows the first step in any pursuit is observation. He noted the rhythm of its movements, the way its armored plates shifted as it breathed, the timing of its roar. But then, something unexpected caught his attention. When the creature's eyes locked with his, it hesitated for a fraction of a second. Not fear, not rage, something else. Intelligence. The beast wasn't charging blindly. It was watching him, calculating. The crowd chanted for blood, their voices echoing through the alien stadium. Commander Zyrk leaned forward, certain the spectacle would end with Elias torn apart. The monster lunged suddenly, its claws ripping through the stone, and Elias dove to the side, rolling across the ground as the impact cracked the arena floor. He fired at the exposed joint of one leg, but the bullet sparked harmlessly off its armor. The crowd roared with laughter again, mockery returning in waves. Elias gritted his teeth, circling the beast, looking for weakness. Another charge came, faster this time, but Elias dodged again, his eyes never leaving the creature's movements. He realized it wasn't fighting with mindless aggression. Its strikes were measured, testing his reactions. It was a predator, yes, but also a prisoner forced into this arena for alien amusement. The thought struck him like lightning. This wasn't his enemy. It was another victim. Elias lowered his rifle slightly, earning gasps from the watching crowd. Instead of shooting, he shouted at the beast, his voice steady, commanding. "I know what they've done to you. I know you're not here by choice." The creature paused, its many eyes narrowing, its massive chest heaving. The aliens laughed even harder, jeering at the absurdity of a man talking to a monster. But the beast did not strike immediately. Instead, it tilted its head, as though listening. The hesitation was enough. Elias pressed on, his voice cutting through the chaos. "They think we're both animals to be mocked. They laugh at me, and they laugh at you. But you're no joke. You're not their pet. You're a hunter same as me." The crowd grew restless, unsure how to react. Some laughed, others hissed, but Commander Zyrk's grin faltered ever so slightly. He had not expected this. The monster roared again, but this time the sound wasn't pure rage. It shook its head, its claws raking the ground, its eyes flickering with conflict. Then, with a sudden lunge, it didn't strike at Elias. It struck at the nearest alien spire, shattering it into fragments. The crowd erupted in chaos. Zyrk shot to his feet, shouting commands, but the beast no longer obeyed. Elias seized the moment, running to the creature's side as if it were an ally rather than prey. Together, man and monster turned their fury on the arena itself. Elias fired shot after shot, not at the beast but at the glowing nodes hidden among the spires, each one a control system feeding the creature pain. As the nodes shattered, the beast roared louder, its movements growing freer, stronger. The alien audience shrieked with panic as the hunt became rebellion. For the first time, the spectacle was no longer under their control. Zyrk's voice boomed across the arena, furious and desperate. "Kill him, beast! Kill him now!" But the monster ignored the command. Instead, it turned its many eyes on the towering screens that displayed Zyrk's face and unleashed a roar so powerful it cracked the glass. Elias felt a strange surge of pride. This wasn't just about him anymore. It was about proving to the aliens that hunters, whether human or creature, were never meant to be mocked or caged. As chaos erupted, Elias climbed onto a broken spire, steadying his rifle. He saw the alien command tower shimmering in the distance, the place where Zyrk and his officers controlled the entire arena. It was protected by shields, technology beyond anything Earth possessed. But Elias didn't see technology. He saw angles, trajectories, and a shot that seemed impossible. His breathing slowed. His focus narrowed. The world faded until there was only him, the rifle, and the target. The crowd shrieked, sensing what he intended. Zyrk shouted orders, demanding the shields be raised higher. But Elias had already pulled the trigger. The bullet cut through the air, spinning across impossible distance. For a breathless moment, the world seemed to hold still. Then the command tower erupted in sparks and flame as the bullet found its mark in the power core hidden beneath its shell. The shields collapsed. The control systems died. The arena fell silent except for the echo of the shot. The aliens, once laughing, now stared in shock. The beast raised its head and roared, a sound of victory and freedom that shook the sky. Elias lowered his rifle, his chest heaving, sweat dripping down his face. He had not killed the creature, and that was the point. He had turned the greatest hunt into an alliance, and with a single impossible shot, he had broken the alien's illusion of control. Commander Zyrk's face reappeared on the shattered screens, his grin gone, replaced by fury. But behind his anger was something else, something far more dangerous for him. Fear. For the first time, the aliens understood what they had unleashed. They had mocked humanity, belittled hunters, and turned pride into a game. But in doing so, they had awoken something they could not contain. Elias stepped down from the spire, his rifle still in hand, his new ally by his side. The crowd was no longer laughing. They were silent, waiting, afraid. The hunt was over, but the war was just beginning. Smoke curled above the ruined arena as the last sparks flickered from the shattered control tower. The alien crowd that had once howled with laughter sat in stunned silence, their many-colored eyes fixed on the man and the beast who stood together in the wreckage. Elias felt the weight of their gaze but did not falter. His rifle rested steady in his hands, the same weapon they had mocked as primitive. Beside him the monstrous creature shifted, its many legs clawing into the stone, its eyes glowing with a strange awareness. They were no longer hunter and prey but partners, bound by defiance. Commander Zyrk's voice broke the silence, filled with fury. "This means nothing. A trick. A parasite from a backwater world will not define the galaxy's hunters." But the words sounded weaker now, edged with desperation. The crowd did not cheer with him. They murmured, confused, uncertain. Elias raised his voice, letting it carry across the broken stadium and into the broadcast feeds that reached every corner of Earth. "You mocked us. You called us weak. You thought our hunts were jokes. But hunting is not about easy prey. It's about patience. It's about respect. It's about knowing when not to kill. His words cut through the air like bullets. He didn't need the aliens to cheer. He needed humanity to hear. On Earth, living rooms erupted with shouts of pride. In cabins and cities, in deserts and jungles, hunters and families raised fists, shouting his name. The humiliation that had blanketed the world lifted like fog in the morning sun. For the first time since the alien arrival, humans felt like they had not only survived but stood taller. Zyrk tried to recover, his grin snapping back into place like a mask. One shot does not win a war. One beast does not make you mighty. But even as he spoke, his officers shifted uneasily. The shield around their fleet was down. The control they prided themselves on had cracked. Elias saw the fear in their eyes, and it was sweeter than any applause. He tilted his rifle casually, as though he were already lining up another impossible shot. Zyrk flinched, just slightly, but the crowd noticed. That single motion rippled through the stadium louder than words. Their commander, their symbol of dominance, had flinched at a human with a rifle. The beast beside Elias roared, shaking the structure until pieces fell from the rafters. Aliens panicked, scattering in their seats. Zyrk shouted for order, but chaos spread faster than his commands. Elias could have pressed the advantage, could have fired at Zyrk himself. Instead, he lowered his rifle and turned his back on the throne. He didn't need to kill him. The galaxy had already seen the truth. Hunters were not jokes. Humans were not prey. The laughter had ended, replaced with silence heavy as stone. Elias walked out of the arena with the beast lumbering behind him. The path cleared before them, aliens shrinking back as though the two were fire and they were dry grass. When Elias stepped into the open sky, the fleet that had hovered like vultures above the planet shifted uneasily. One by one, their weapons dimmed, their engines cooling as if the will to fight had evaporated. Then, slowly, like predators slinking back into the shadows, the ships began to rise. They peeled away from the atmosphere, their shadows lifting from the ground. The invasion that had never begun was over before it could start. On Earth, celebrations erupted. People filled the streets, hunters embraced one another in disbelief, and laughter returned, not alien laughter, but human laughter, the kind born of joy and relief. News anchors cried on air. Children shouted Elias's name. In bars and lodges, stories of his impossible shot were already growing into legend. Humanity had been mocked, but now it had an answer carved in fire and precision. Yet Elias did not celebrate. He stood on a quiet ridge overlooking the rectorena as the beast beside him lowered itself to the ground with a rumbling sigh. He placed the hand against its armored side, feeling the heat of its body and the slow rhythm of its breath. "You're free now," he whispered. "So am I." For years he had carried the weight of failure, the guilt of hesitation. But here, in this strange alliance, he had found redemption. Not in the kill, but in restraint. Not in victory, but in defiance. Commander Zyrk sent one final broadcast before his fleet disappeared into the stars. His voice was low, stripped of laughter. "Earth will not be forgotten. You have earned a place among hunters, though not as you think. We will return, not with ridicule, but with respect." The transmission cut, and with it the last of their presence. Elias knew the galaxy's predators would never see humanity the same way again. In the weeks that followed, the world tried to return to normal. Hunters once mocked were now celebrated, their traditions honored instead of ridiculed. Elias refused interviews and declined medals. He retreated once again to his cabin, where the woods were quiet and the stars hung undisturbed above the treeline. Yet he was no longer the man who had hidden from the world. He was something else now, something larger. A symbol of pride reborn. One evening, as the fire crackled in his hearth, Elias heard a noise outside. Heavy footsteps, deliberate and slow. He stepped out with his rifle, expecting perhaps a visitor or a journalist too stubborn to give up. Instead, the beast stood in the clearing, its massive form silhouetted against the moonlight. It had followed him, crossing whatever distance lay between its alien cage and his quiet forest. Its eyes glowed softly, no longer red with rage but calm, steady, watchful. Elias stared for a long time, then let out a tired laugh. "Well," he muttered, "guess I'll need a bigger backyard." The beast lowered itself, resting like a giant hound, and Elias sat beside it, staring at the sky. The stars stretched endlessly, filled with predators and mysteries he might never understand. But he no longer felt small beneath them. He no longer felt like a ghost hiding from his past. The galaxy knew his name now, but more importantly, so did he. Elias Cross, the sharpshooter who had faced laughter and turned it into silence. The man who had proven that hunters were not to be belittled, not to be caged, not to be mocked. And in that quiet night, with the world safe and the galaxy watching from afar, Elias allowed himself the one thing he had denied for years: peace.